Today I am going to discuss a topic on cultural evolution. Archaeology can establish sequences of cultures in various regions, and these cultures represent societies or phases in the development of societies potentially. Therefore, archaeological sequences reveal chronological order in which different kinds of society emerge historically. Now, prehistorians do, in fact, apply such a general classification to their cultures in the Old World, assigning them respectively to Stone, Bronze, or Iron Age. In this topic, an attempt has been made to show how far the current archaeological classification is serviceable to the present purpose, that is, to trace the evolution of culture. Now let's come to the cultural evolution. Regarding cultures as geographical units, the differences between them appear less arbitrary and more significant. They can be partially explained as adjustment to different environments. The human species is not physiologically adapted to any particular environment. Its adaptation is secured by its extracorporeal equipments of tools, clothes, houses, and the rest. Fire, clothing, houses, and appropriate diet enable man to endure Arctic cold and tropic heat equally. Material culture is thus a large response to environment. It consists of the devices evolved to meet the needs evoked by particular climatic conditions, to take advantage of local resources of food, and to secure protection against wild beasts, floods, or other nuisances infesting a given region. Prehistory indeed shows how culture grows and more diversified through the differentiation of societies in response to special stimuli, geographical, technological, or ideological. The cultural evolutions or revolutions can be accordingly be used to mark the phases or stages in the historical process, which may be summarized as follows. Now come to Stone Age. Stone Age is broadly divided into three. Number 1, Paleolithic. Number 2, Mesolithic. And number 3, Neolithic. Now come to the first Paleolithic cultural period. The story begins from 500,000 years ago. During that time, man was a rare animal engaged in gathering food for survival. Man lived like a parasite. The gathering economy, what Morgan terms savagery, provide a sole source of livelihood open to any human society. Nearly 98% of humanity's sojourn on this planet throughout the whole. The archaeologists call it the Paleolithic or the Old Stone Age, and the geologists name it the Pleistocene. The Paleolithic has three cultural phases. They are Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, and Upper Paleolithic. Similarly, the Pleistocene also has three distinct divisions, namely the Early Pleistocene, the Middle Pleistocene, and the Late Pleistocene. Now come to the Lower Paleolithic cultural phases. It has two-fold divisions. They are the core industry and the flag industry. Each industry has again two traditions. The core industry has the Abelian and the Acheulean traditions, whereas the flag industry has the Clatonian and the Levalloisian tradition. The Abelio-Acheulean complex has the largest known excavated area of distribution It is generally believed that the cruder and the heavier chopper-like hand axes belong to the Abelian, while the thinner, lighter, and more systematic ones were made by Acheulean men. The Clactonian tradition is dated earliest to the late first interglacial, that is Gun's Mindel, and continued till the beginning of the Mindel-Ries interglacial. The Levallois tradition is named after a locality at Levallois, a suburb of Paris. In fact, the Levallois technique continued to be a favorite flagging technique till the end of the Mousterian period. It is customary to call any industry as Levallois fasces if the total number of Levallois flags in it exceeds 30%. Now come to the Middle Paleolithic. From typological point of view, the main criterion for dividing the Lower and Middle Paleolithic rests on the absence of the typical Acheulean hand axes. Decidedly, it is a period lying in between the two widely varying periods of Lower Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic. In 1869, De Mortillet saw the Middle Paleolithic as representing a single cultural tradition called the Mousterian. It was defined as the tradition associated with the Neanderthal man, that is Homo neanderthalensis. This tradition was named after a rock shelter at Les Moustiers in southwestern France. It is characterized by the presence of the preceding stage, that is particularly the Acheulean. Francois Baud's prolonged excavation of the Combe Granel cave in Les Gizis district of France characterized the Mousterian as a group containing various traditions with distinct development phases. The entire Middle Paleolithic in Europe can broadly be placed between the beginning of the Ries-Worm interglacial to the end of the Worm II. In the context of the collective finds from his excavation, he defined for the first time that the Mousterian tradition was classified in 4 quantifiable and objectively definable categories. He called them as 4 different tool-making traditions practiced by different tribes of Mousterian people who frequented the same cave or rock shelters in the course of their wandering. The 4 Mousterian categories are the Mousterian of Acheulean tradition, the typical Mousterian, the denticulated Mousterian, and the Carinthian Mousterian. Now come to the last phase of Paleolithic, that is Upper Paleolithic. Till 1930, the idea of evolution of the Upper Paleolithic in Western Europe followed a behavioral scheme. There are 3 successive traditions prevailing in the Upper Paleolithic cultural phase. They are the Aurignacian, the Solutrean, and the Megdalenian. Now turn to the Aurignacian. This tradition derives its name from the Cape of Aurignac in the Pyrenees district of France. This tradition has 5 divisions. They are Odi stage, Lower Aurignacian, Middle Aurignacian, Gravitian stage, and Pont Robert stage. Now come to the next tradition, Solutrean. This tradition is named after the prehistoric site called La Solute in France. It is characterized by the presence of flagging technique. The laurel leaf and willow leaf points are the typical implements of the Solutrean tradition. Now come to the Magdalenian tradition. This tradition is named after the rock shelter at La Magdalene in France. The Parrot Big Graver is the characteristic stone tool of this tradition. Magdalenian is noted for the remarkable work of art for its bone and antler tools. Gradually, bone industry degenerated and painting became less vigorous. Both cave art and home art were found to exist with marvelous performance. Now come to the Paleolithic art. The first appearance of this art date back to the Aurignacian times and continue till the end of the Megdalenian times. The former is called art mobile by the French prehistorians and home art by the English counterparts, while the latter is called cave art or parietal art. The decoration or artwork executed by lines on either of two kinds of object is known as engravings, and decoration done by paints using pigments like ochre, minerals, burnt bonds is known as painting. The carving so engraved that the decoration stands out of the panel is known as bas relief. All the three varieties of art were evidence from the Upper Paleolithic finds. Now come to the cave art. The cave art essentially depicts the animal motifs. They are invariably shown in profile, depicting three-dimensional animals in two-dimensional canvas. Among the animals, the most commonly represented ones are the large late Pleistocene mammals, whose bones have been found from the Paleolithic sites. Now come to home art. This art is drawn on the bone and stone in the cave deposits, accompanied by datable implements. The use of color was known to them, and polychrome painting was practiced during this time. Now let us turn to the second Stone Age cultural period, that is Mesolithic cultural period. Mesolithic period refers to that phase of human culture which in evolutionary sequence succeeds the Upper Paleolithic during the early part of the Holocene. It was started around 10,000 BC and continued up to 5,000 to 6,000 BC. In various parts of Europe, it survived till 2000 BC. Till the end of the 19th century, the Mesolithic period was not identified as a distinct cultural stage in man's history. The Mesolithic gained its recognition as a separate cultural identity only after the discovery of the type site at Mas-d'Azil, a cave in France near a famous Magdalenian site. Thus, the Mesolithic as a specific phase in the cultural history to mankind covers the whole of Europe. The Mesolithic culture of Europe can classify into the following traditions. Number 1, Aegilian, which were first found from France. Number 2, Asturian. Most of them were discovered from Spain. And number 3, Lernian. This tradition is confined to Ireland. And number 4, Tardenoisian. This tradition is found in Alps, Belgium and England, whereas Megdalenian is found in Denmark, and Kinchenmindian is found Baltic and North Sea areas. And lastly, the Campanian is found in Belgium. Microliths are the characteristic tool type of Mesolithic cultural period. It includes geometric and non-geometric microliths. An oval kind of hole pierced through this flattish harpoon in the center is taken as a positive new functional evolution of this phase. In Northern Europe, three broad chronological stages for the Mesolithic period have been enunciated based on the counting of glacial warp. They are period 1, period 2, and period 3. The characteristics of these cultural periods have also been grouped into 3 broad categories, namely Microlithic culture, number 2 X culture, and lastly the Tang culture. Now let us turn to the last Stone Age cultural period, that is Neolithic cultural period. Neolithic period refers to that cultural phase where the nature of culture began to increase the food supply by cultivating plants and breeding domestic animals. The new food producing economy is distinctive of what Morgan calls barbarism. The oldest Neolithic society known to the archaeological record consists of mixed farmers who have already domesticated some of the beasts like sheep, goat, cow, camel, cattle, and pig. By heating friable and plastic clay, the farmer's wife could induce the chemical change and produce pottery. By the rotary motion of the spinning, she could convert certain natural fibers like wool and flax, cotton and silk into threads. Weaving was invented using loom. Neolithic households normally live in built huts of mud, reeds, log, stone, or withes, plastered with clay. An axe head is one of the tools made from the fine-grained rock, sharpened with grinding. Archaeologists took the polished stone axe as the hallmark of Neolithic equipment. Now let us move another stage, that is the Copper Age. Fruitful inventions and discoveries were more fertile at near about 3000 BC than any period in human history prior to the 16th century AD. The production was surplus above their requirements. Its achievements made possible the economic reorganization of society, what B. Gordon Childe termed the urban revolution. The Neolithic revolution took place in the grey night of remote prehistory. The second revolution, that is the urban revolution, took place in front of our eyes in the full twilight of prehistory. The place where urban revolution took place was relatively arid. It is bounded on the west by the Sahara and the Mediterranean, on the east by the Thar Desert and the Himalayas, on the north by Eurasiatic mountain spine like the Balkans, Caucasus, Alps, etc., and on the south by the Tropic of Cancer. The geological, physiological, and climatic conditions of this zone prove propitious to the revolutionary development. It provided the raw materials for the decisive discoveries. Dates, olives, figs, or grapes were the raw material available during this period. The permanent settlement was beside the riverside or perennial spring. Agriculture was totally dependent on irrigation. Some societies encountered problems regarding irrigation. Silk in western Iran was one among them. At Silk, a second phase can be seen in the villages built on ruins of those earlier settlers. The houses were built of molded bricks and dried in the sun. Copper was common, but it was still treated as a superior sort of stonework by coal hammering. Equipments were made from local bone, stone, and chert, supplemented by a little imported obsidian. At Silk 3, copper was worked intelligently by casting to make axes and other implements. Potters appeared to make vessels quickly on a fast spinning wheel. Seals were used to mark their properties. Finally, Siak Pho was a colony of literate Elamites who had achieved civilization in the alluvial valley of Kerkha and imposed it upon the barbarian mountaineers about 3000 BC. The implication and revolutionary sequence of metallurgy is the combination of four major discoveries. Now let us move to another metal age, that is the Bronze Age. This was initiated in the alluvial valleys of the Nile, the Tigris, Euphrates and the Indus about 5000 years ago, with the transformation of some riverside villages into cities. Production was surplus, which supported a new urban population of specialized craftsmen, merchants, priests, officials and clerks. The first 2000 years of civilization coincide with what archaeologists describe as the Bronze Age, because copper and bronze were the only metals used for tools and weapons. Now come to the last part of the metal age, that is the early Iron Age. This was initiated by the divulgation of an economical method of producing wrought iron about 1200 BC, which popularized metal equipment. At the same time, in the Near East, the invention of an alphabetical script popularized writing, which had been a mystery confined to a small class of learned clerks. After 700 BC, a small change in coin money facilitated retail transaction. In the classical or Greco-Roman economy, the surplus, partly derived from specialized farming, was more widely distributed among an upper middle class of merchants, financiers and capitalist farmers. These permitted a notable growth of population, at least in the Mediterranean basin, which was, however, ultimately checked by the relative impoverishment or actual enslavement of the primary producers and artisans. Let's now come to the concluding part. Man has succeeded in surviving and multiplying cheaply by improving his equipment. During the Stone Age, he made chopper, hand axe, cleaver, picks, edges, and axes for various purposes such as chopping, cutting, cleaving, digging, killing. Men constructed huts made of wood for providing shelter, domesticated animals to provide either milk or meat or both. During the Stone Age itself, man had transformed his livelihood from hunting and gathering economy to food-producing stage with a settled village life. After the Neolithic Revolution, some riverside villages were transformed into cities and produced a surplus of foodstuffs over and above their requirements. The people used stone and copper tools with these surplus to support a new urban population. Writing was introduced and commercial activities were developed. During the Bronze Age, men used copper and its alloys, bronze, for making their tools and weapons. The social surplus, derivable from subsistence agriculture, was concentrated in the hands of rulers and commercial population. The popularization of metal equipment happened only when iron was discovered about 1200 BC. With this metal, an alphabetical script was invented, which led to the popularized writing, that is historical period.